These striking images of Chinese warships off the coast of Taiwan this month, a dire warning of a potential invasion that could disrupt the global technology supply chain, plunge the world into an economic catastrophe, and start a hot war between the U.S. and China. And according to one geopolitics expert, an actual invasion could be over before the U.S. even has a chance to respond.
So a lot of people assume that this would be sort of a Normandy type of beach landing. The reality is the terrain does not allow it.
Dmitry Alperovich predicted the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now in a new book he lays out how China could seize Taiwan. First, he says, the Chinese would mount a lightning-fast assault from the air and the sea.
You're still going to move amphibious assault ships across the strait. Each of them can deliver about 800 troops and, more importantly, dozens of troop transport helicopters as well as gunships to do an airborne assault. They can reach the two airports within 10 to 15 minutes.
They can do that by parking them in international waters. And Taiwan would feel constrained from firing first because that would be seen as provoking a war.
You're going to have these transport ships, mostly civilian vessels, and have been loaded with hundreds of thousands of troops, armored vehicles, tanks, logistics that you need to occupy an island of 23 million people.
To cover the attackers, Alperovich says, China would strike Taiwan's defenses from afar.
You're going to have bombers launched from the mainland. You're going to have the largest cruise missile and ballistic missile and rocket forces in the world, pummeling fixed radar installations, pummeling naval facilities, pummeling communication nodes.
Then, he predicts, Chinese Marines in huge airboats would rush up the river leading to the center of the capital city, Taipei.
All of this can happen literally within the first 30 minutes of action.
All the while, he says, the U.S. president facing an awful choice. Allow the aggression to stand or launch a war that could kill more Americans than World War II. So why is Taiwan so vital to U.S. and global interests? One reason? Taiwan manufactures almost 70% of the world's semiconductors, those tiny boards used in everything from phones and laptops to life-saving medical devices and the vast server networks that power American industry. And if China invades, experts say, the U.S. or Taiwan is likely to destroy those factories, which would spell economic disaster for much of the world. Or, if China manages to capture the factories and keep them operational, it would leap ahead in the world's most important technologies. Alperovich says that would harm American prosperity and security. But so would a war with China.
In the first year of that war, global depression right off the bat.
And that assumes it doesn't go nuclear.
That's right.
Intelligence agencies and military leaders have been warning for years that China is working on plans to seize Taiwan by force. The admiral in charge of U.S. Pacific Command told Congress in March that, quote, all indications point to the People's Liberation Army meeting Xi Jinping's alleged goal of potentially invading Taiwan by 2027.
We haven't faced a threat like this since World War II.
China has spent the last 2 decades modernizing its military to be able to destroy American ships in the Pacific.
You're going to lose ships. You're going to lose a lot of sailors. You're going to lose thousands, potentially even tens of thousands of American troops.
Alperovich says the U.S. must make containing China the focus of its foreign policy.
The United States has to make it clear to them that the cost of this conflict are going to be too huge for the Chinese economy.
He says that means ending U.S. reliance on China for things like critical minerals and solar panels. And it means arming Taiwan in a way that would make an invasion much more painful than it would be today. All to influence the calculations of the Chinese president.
We want him to wake up every single day and look at himself in the mirror as he's shaving and say, today is not the day.
Ken Delanian, NBC News.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Millstone, peace, citation, hope, full elect, shalom. And let me tell this lesson. China plans to invade Taiwan by 2027. So as you can see in the video that I just brought out, pretty much started going, of course, into detail about how, if China ends up invading Taiwan, that, the U.S. will have to get involved and they will have to end up destroying some of the semiconductor factories that's in Taiwan. And I mentioned if, China just manages to capture it like those factories before the U.S. invades it, then what that will happen will be China would be like a step ahead in terms of their technology. But of course, those two potential outcomes could result in the U.S. basically facing a prosperity loss. So that's what it said in the video. And either way, having war with China will also cause a greater loss for America. And I feel like it will be even a greater loss than if they were to allow China to capture those semiconductor factories and, you know, keep it to China's personal, you know, benefit. So yeah, other than that, like, it's still gonna hurt and harm the U.S. anyway, because their security and their prosperity will basically dwindle, making China far ahead than the U.S. And at this point, when it's coming to the USA, it's like, you know, destruction is so imminent. It's just, you know, pretty much bound to happen at any point in time. And these other nations, of course, they're getting tired of the USA. And it's already prophesied in the scriptures that all nations will turn against the U.S. So, let me see. Let me bring out this article from insurancejournal.com. It says, if China invades Taiwan, it will cost world economy $10 trillion. And this was on January 11, 2024 by Jennifer Welch, Jenny Leonard, Mava Cousin, and Gerard D. People, and Tom Orlick. It says, war for Taiwan would have a cost in blood and treasure so vast that even those unhappiest with the status quo have reason not to risk it. Bloomberg Economics estimate the price tag at around $10 trillion, equal to about 10% of global GDP, dwarfing the blow from the war in the Ukraine, COVID pandemic, and global financial crisis. China's rising economic and military heft, Taiwan's burgeoning sense of national identity, and fractious relations between Beijing and Washington mean the conditions for a crisis are in place. With cross-strait relations on the ballot, Taiwan's January 13th election is a potential flashpoint. Let me see. It says, few put a high probability on an imminent Chinese invasion. The People Liberation Army is massaging troops on the coast. Reports of corruption in China's military cast doubts on President Xi Jinping's ability to wage a successful campaign. U.S. officials say tensions eased somewhat at the November summit between President Joe Biden and Xi, who pledged heartwarming measures to woo foreign investors. Let me see. I'm just going to skip down to the most important part. So, now it says right here, modeling the cost of a crisis. So it says the Bloomberg Economics has modeled two scenarios: a Chinese invasion drawing the U.S. into a local conflict and a blockade cutting Taiwan off from trade with the rest of the world. A suite of models is used to estimate the impact on GDP, taking account of the blows to semiconductor supply, disruptions to shipping in the region, trade sanctions and tariffs, and the impact on financial markets. For the main protagonists, other major economies, and the world as a whole, the biggest hit comes from the missing semiconductors, factory lines producing laptops, tablets, smartphones, where Taiwan's high-end chips are the irreplaceable golden screw would stall. Autos and other sectors that use lower-end chips would also take a significant hit. Barriers of trade and a significant risk of shock in financial markets add to the cost. So it shows Chinese invasion draws U.S. into global conflict, 100% cut in Taiwan trade, cut in U.S. near 100% cut in U.S.-China trade, 50% tariffs between U.S. allies and China, 40-point spike in VIX, 80% cut in trade to and from Japan, Korea, ASEAN, negative 40% Taiwan, and the China blockades Taiwan, 100% cut in Taiwan trade, 50% tariffs between U.S. and China, 25% tariffs between U.S. allies and China, and negative 12.12% Taiwan, negative 8.9% mainland China. Yeah, so it says in the case of a war, Taiwan's economy will be decimated based on a comparable recent conflicts. Bloomberg Economics estimates a 40% blow to GDP. Population and industrial base concentrated on the coast would add to the human and economic costs. With relations to major trade partners turned off and no access to advanced semiconductors, China's GDP would suffer a 60.7% blow. For the U.S., further from the center of the action, but still with a lot at stake due to the reliance of Apple on the Asian electronic supply chain. For example, GDP will be down 6.7%. For the world as a whole, GDP will be down 10.2%, with South Korea, Japan, and other East Asian economies most impacted. So yeah, so that's the show right there, that how it will have a pretty much a major effect on the world as a whole if the U.S. was to go to war with China. And the thing is that it's potentially mentioned that how President Xi Jinping, he wants to start a war with Taiwan, well, to invade Taiwan in 2027, that he plans on doing that. And with the way things is going, I'm just saying it could potentially be faster, because it feels like with every year it's always something going on, and prophecies are moving quick. You know, each month there's always something happening. So without further ado, I'll bring out some scriptures, and Lord willing, make this lesson edifying. And this is Matthew chapter 24 verse 6. It says, "Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Verse 7, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." So yeah, so we're in a time now that you're starting to see wars or rumors of wars, you know, pretty much starting to spread about. You know, there's always articles almost every day something is, you know, being talked about in terms of plans on invasion, or, you know, certain catastrophes, or, you know, that you see on the news. There's always something that is going on in the economy. There's always an update on the military, and it's always usually something that's negative for another country, you know what I mean? So things is really heating up, you know, in terms of prophecy. So the Lord is just getting, you know, all these things started. And, you know, in the time that we're in, it is the beginning of sorrows. And you know, as I said in the video, when it's coming to the semiconductor industry, you know, it was responsible for helping, like, because the part of the technology with semiconductors, it helps with, like, you know, mobile phone screens or laptops, and, you know, also helps with you know, life-saving medical technology, things of that nature, as it was mentioned in the video. So let's say if those factories end up getting destroyed, just imagine what's it going to do to the supply chain, you know, in terms of technology. And you see the dumb average American doesn't really look at the news like that, and, you know, do research on certain events, like, let's say, certain things that's going on in other countries in their military, and then if they see that there's a supply chain shortage because of the fact that, you know, some military invasion or some sort of catastrophic military strike happened at a certain country, you know, just listing the potential possible, you know, scenarios that could potentially happen. that could eventually cause like a shortage in the supply chain. And of course, if there's a shortage on certain things, there's going to be an increased demand, and at the same time, the prices is going to eventually skyrocket, and that's going to lead to as you would know, for like inflation, like things is going to increase drastically in price. It's going to be hyperinflated. And of course, in the times of war, things cost way more money than ever. And let me bring out Jeremiah 51. It says, verse 7, it says, Babylon had been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of our wine. Therefore, the nations are mad. And in this case, China would be really pissed off if America tries to, get involved in their business, because America is always known for trying to get involved in every nation's affairs. And America's been a bully for so damn long, so these other nations are just sick and tired of it. And let's say, if Yasharahla, like our Lord, wasn't to come back, I probably would think that it would be either China or Russia that would be like the next superpower, so to say. But of course, those plans that China or Russia has, or whatever other nation that think they're gonna rule, those plans is basically gonna not go as expected for them, because who's coming to rule is gonna, of course, is gonna be the Lord, Yasharahla, during the midst of World War III, when the other nations are, pretty much throwing their missiles at America and pretty much going at it. So yeah, it says in Jeremiah 51 verse 8, it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country, for a judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. So yeah, so that's pretty much what's going to happen. So Babylon is going to be destroyed, and of course, there's no healing for this land, for this country, America. And of course, before this country gets destroyed, it's going to be, wars happening in society. Wars happening amongst people of different social classes, wars happening amongst people of different races, and things of that nature. So at this point, anybody that's not in this truth is, it's really not wise to be in the world, and having your eyes on this earth, because it's like we are already in the beginning stages of World War III. All the stuff that's going on in the news, scriptures talk about how it is a high time to wake you out of sleep. So yeah, that's pretty much it on that. I don't want to make the lesson longer than it should. So with that, I'd like to say, call on you, Yahweh, Bashim, Yashab, Bashim, Kakadash, double honors, and positive, Millstone, peace, citation, hope for elect, Shalom.